Hakim, you're muted.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending on where you are getting me from. Welcome to the final event of the three-part GIRA Forum convened meeting titled Delivering Research and Innovations in Agriculture Greenhouse Gases. My name is Hakim Mwape. I'll be your chair for this session. Just a few words about myself. I am a fellow and coordinator of the Africa program at the New Zealand Agriculture Greenhouse Gas Research Center. I am responsible for stakeholder linkages and coordination, capacity development, and international cooperation with a focus on Africa. Just a quick announcements or notes on the format and information for all our participants. The meeting or the recording of this session will be made available for future viewing via the RUForum and GRA websites. And all participants are encouraged to mute their microphones and use the chat box to ask questions. And participants will be, especially when given a chance to speak, please just ensure that you just ask your question within a minute. And all those that are going to be presenting, our presenters have been encouraged and requested to stick to their time. Before I just get into today's program, I would like to just provide a short summary of day one and day two activities, just for the benefit of those that did not participate. On day one, we had a high-level panel discussion on the different models for financing agricultural research and collaboration. The discussion drew on experiences from key research institutions, particularly FARA, APARI, and Fontagro. These institutions represented Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We also had examples of climate change mitigation research from IRI and SEAT. On the second day, we had a keynote address from WASCO. The presentation highlighted the importance of capacity development and training, not only for community development, but also peace and stability for the African continent. We also had 8 experts or principal investigators from different universities across Africa who presented their projects, which mainly focused on reducing GHG emissions and strengthening MRV systems. IT, I would just request that, I don't know whether you are able to move my presentation. Thank you. So day two just ended with a presentation from the CASAX project, which demonstrated the importance of effective collaboration, partnership, and networking in advancing agriculture and GHG research in Africa. Today's program is divided into 2 sessions. Please move the presentation. Thank you. Each session will be followed by a Q&A segment. The first session, improving quantification of agricultural GHG emissions. We'll just provide examples of programs for improving capability of researchers to conduct applied research on agriculture greenhouse emissions. This session will also showcase some projects aimed at improving the estimates of national emissions and mitigations at tier 2 levels and decision support for achieving NDCs and tracking NDC performance. The second session, setting up effective research programs. This session will just draw on experiences from the European Union to improve understanding on the steps required to transition to a low carbon future. This session will also highlight some mechanisms that are in place to enhance EU and Africa relations. We will also have 3 breakout sessions where we will discuss key actions and strategies for strengthening science policy linkages in Africa. I would encourage all of you to just actively participate in this breakout session. If you have any question as we go, please ensure that you just place these questions in the chat box, and we will make sure that we attend to your questions. Thank you for joining us today, and please remember that we value your time and we'll endeavor to just stick to time, and we'll do our best to make this meeting as efficient and successful as possible. Just allow me now to get to our first session. We will begin the presentation with an update on the GRA CCAF's Cleavegratz PhD Awards program. I now have the honor to introduce a colleague of mine from the GRA, Katrina Besanova. Katrina is a communications expert with over 8 years of experience in sustainability policy and science interface. Katrina has extensive experience in network development, event management, content creation, and multi-stakeholder collaboration. Katrina will also be accompanied or assisted by Veronica Ellis, a policy analyst at the Ministry for Primary Industries in New Zealand. Veronica has keen interest in developing capacities for young people and currently works as a coordinator for the Cleavegratz Program. This is a scholarship for PhD students from developing countries. Details will be given in the presentation. Katrina, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Akim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So that's working. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm very happy to join you today. My name is Katerina Besanova. I'm one of the coordinators of the Cleavegratz program, as Akim already mentioned. And I'm currently based in Ireland, and I'm joined by my colleague Veronica Ellis, who is now also online here, and she's joining from New Zealand. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about the Cleavegratz program. I will talk about the setup of the program, its main features, and then share a video message from our alumni with their testimonials, so you can hear about the program firsthand. And hopefully we will have time for a couple of questions in the end. So if you could go to the next slide, please. No, the previous one. Sorry. So Cleavegratz program stands for Climate, Food, and Farming Global Research Alliance Development Scholarship. It's a joint initiative of the CGIAR program on climate change, agriculture, and food security, short for CCAFS, and Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gases, GRA, and the National University of Galway in Ireland, Ryan Institute, was contracted to serve as a Cleavegratz administrator. So that's where I'm currently based. That's why it's in the picture. And the program is funded by the government of New Zealand and supported also with the funding from CGIAR Trust Fund. So next slide, please. So what is Cleavegratz? Cleavegratz is a capacity building initiative, and it's aimed at increasing scientific capacity of early career scientists coming from low and middle income countries, so that they could undertake short-term scientific training and research on topics related to measurement, modeling, and mitigation of agricultural greenhouse gases. Basically, the idea is to facilitate early career scientists. We're talking about the PhD level, to have access and exposure, and as well as technical equipment and software in the top of the field research centers around the world, which are part of the GRA and CGIAR networks. And the funding covers 6 months visits. And since 2017, the program had 124 awardees from 32 different countries around the world, and we are currently running through the 4th round of the program. So next slide, please. And the Cleavegratz is more than just a fellowship. It's also focuses on building relationships and networks, developing a community of professionals to increase global expertise in measurement, tracking, and reduction of emissions from agriculture. We're also constantly working on improving the program and helping our alumni to build skills in science communication, international collaborations, and political processes that take place in the climate and agriculture space. So for instance, in 2020, we ran a Cleavegratz Science Collaboration webinar series. And prior to that, also organized the workshops and events in person, which I hope we will eventually come back to. The Cleavegratz also of course publish scientific publications, which all of them you can find on the GRA website if you search for Cleavegratz in the search engine there. And next slide. And apart from that, we also foster relationships and networks between the awardees. So for example, we have a buddy system in which alumni partnered with each other, like newcomers, newbies, with those who already went through the program, so they can explain to each other how it worked for them, share tips and tricks. And we also have a social media platform for the entire alumni network, where everyone, all of the alumni can exchange collaboration opportunities, ideas, and share events and new publications and whatever they would like to with each other. And of course, it is also a cultural exchange opportunity to just meet people from different cultures, learn about how it is in other countries, how it works in other languages. But let's hear from the alumni firsthand. If you could please put the video on.
My name is Gloria Edwards, and I'm a Cleavegratz scholar. I started my PhD in Zambia University with just Nigeria as my case study. But when I came in contact with the Cleavegratz, I added Vietnam to my study. Yeah, because my host institute is in Vietnam, the International Rice Research Institute in Vietnam. So by working with my host institute, I learned a lot about the Vietnam rice system, and I decided to even add it to my core PhD study. So this is my Cleavegratz experience. It's a huge opportunity to get into a large network of supporting scientists and experts, and it's very crucial for early stage researchers just like you.
I'm Joseph, a PhD student at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, Nigeria. I'm currently training as a Cleavegratz Fellow in Colombia. The program affords me the opportunity to learn greenhouse gas measurements and mitigation techniques in ruminant animal production. Also, students are encouraged to participate in this program because it improves their international networking and also enhances their ability to conduct research in greenhouse gas mitigation techniques.
Hello, I'm Mohamed Merabjan from Algeria. My research topic is managing nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide through improved agriculture liming practice. You are welcome in the world of Cleavegratz students. You will meet with the big scientific and students from all over the world, sophisticated material, new area, and new culture, and don't worry about your mother language. Bye.
Hello everyone, I'm Nelly Momo, a Cameroonian student, a Cleavegratz Round 4 award. I'm currently working in Bangor University on nitrous oxide emission from dairy farm. So this work has helped me to build up my skills both in lab work and field work for greenhouse gases mitigation. So this opportunity given by Cleavegratz has helped me to open wide doors for my future career. That's why I'm massively encouraging a student to apply, because they would not just build up their networking, but they are going to enjoy a new environment, new culture. So, well, thank you, Cleavegratz. Thank you all. Bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sani Idris from Nigeria. Cleavegratz Program has brought to my conscience the need to deep research in climate change thematic areas, especially areas related to greenhouse gas data acquisition in soil subjected to agricultural land uses. It has really helped in reshaping my PhD work by co-opting a number of objectives that relate to greenhouse gas measurement. Thanks.
Hi. Hello, everybody. My name is Kofi Kunedu-Buat and I'm from Ghana, and I was part of the 2019 cohort of the Cleavegratz Fellowship. My experience with a scholarship scheme is one that will stay with me forever because of the exposure it gave me and the platform it offered me to learn in my research focus area, which is low emissions development, sustainable systems development. And so the scholarship scheme offered me that opportunity to be mentored also, which is very crucial for any early career researcher. And I still fall on these networks and the mentors I had during the fellowship. Even as we speak now, I fall heavily on them, and they don't hesitate at all to help me. And the best thing that also happened to me in the scholarship was the fun part. You know, it was fun, and the opportunity also to learn and to meet early career researchers to form networks, which I take very seriously. And so for up-and-coming young researchers and PhD students, I would encourage you to take advantage of the Cleavegratz Scholarship Program, because it has helped me, and I know and I have no doubt that it will help you also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So yes, I think that the video speaks for itself, and it always also makes me feel very uplifted when I watch it. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and let us know if you have any questions. We will be available to answer them at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaja. Wow. You are right, the presentation speaks for itself, and just to listen to those young people talking about research and how they are developing networks and how they are advancing their knowledge on greenhouse gases. That is quite uplifting. We'll continue with the next presentation. It's now my honor and privilege to just introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Tony van der Waarden. Tony is a senior scientist at AgResearch in New Zealand. He is the project lead of a project called Dataman. This is a flagship project that aims to provide researchers and inventory compilers with access to the most up-to-date knowledge on GHG emissions from manure management. Tony's research also includes greenhouse gas emissions and mitigation from pasture-based livestock systems. Tony is not with us today, but was kind enough to record his presentation. So I would just request Secretariat to just go ahead with the presentation. Please just make sure you share the sound.
You cannot hear the sound?
No, I'm not getting it from here.
Okay, just a moment.
Kia ora. Hello, everybody.
Can you hear the sound now?
We could hear
initially got first bit we were hearing.
Kia ora.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tony van der Waarden, and I'm with AgResearch in New Zealand. I've been leading a project called Dataman, which is looking at greenhouse gas emissions from manure management systems. And I'm here to talk to you today about establishing a greenhouse gas database that focuses on manure management. Now, as many of you will realize and know, greenhouse gas emissions, when it comes to methane or nitrous oxide or ammonia, we're looking at emissions along the manure management chain. Depending what type of farming system you have, it may have all of these components, housing, storage, or field, or maybe one or two of them. But if you've got livestock in a house and they're excreting onto the surface, that manure will then go into storage before being applied into the paddock, onto the field as a source of nutrients. And so through each step, there's going to be losses of these gases. And so we're always interested in trying to find ways to reduce those emissions and utilize the nutrients in the manure for growing more crops and more grass. Our research also focuses on animals that are grazing directly, not just animals in housing. So extensive grazing, intensive grazing, we look at that as well as a source of these emissions, because we see that as a management of livestock on the paddock, on the field. So this project, Dataman, the aim of this, it started about two or 3 years ago. The aim of it was to provide access to the most up-to-date knowledge on managing manure greenhouse gases. A key component of this project was developing a database, and we wanted to make sure that that was a publicly available, publicly accessible database. And from that, we wanted to be able to develop new emission factors, identify key variables that are influencing those emissions, examine different mitigation strategies and quantify them, the effectiveness of them, and also provide guidance for improving inventories. The project covered a number of countries around the world in terms of partners. It was led from New Zealand, with Chile being supported there with a postdoc. We had a postdoctoral scientist through the GRA Learn program. And then we had a number of partners in Europe as well. And so that made for a great range of diverse backgrounds, new knowledge coming into this project on livestock management systems. Methodology, it sort of focused on three key areas. We've got the database construction, we've got the analysis of the data, statistical analysis, and then inventory refinement. Now that first part, database construction, was, I would say, the most taxing part of the project. It took quite some time to identify the variables, the factors, the key factors that we wanted to include in the database. It's a balance. It's a balance between having a very rich set of variables versus not exhausting people from entering data from publications. So there was, that balance was quite critical to get that right. The next step was developing that database, and there was importantly, a quality control aspect to that. Entering data, we're all human and we all make mistakes, and errors did occur. And so that's why there was a need to have a quality control process throughout the whole process, throughout the development of the database. And then we collated that and we published it and put it online. The database has been analyzed, or the field database has been analyzed. So we've got housing, storage, and field databases. The field one has been analyzed already, and we've published some work, some new findings from that. The housing and storage databases are in the process of being analyzed as this work continues on. We've already developed some recommendations for improving inventories. And in terms of dissemination, we've done a number of presentations to conferences, and the research papers come out of this as well. Just want to focus on the data collection and collation process. So, as I said, there was the development of the key variables. That was very key, very important to get that right. And so that's the process of data collation and the type of information to collate. Then we went through existing databases and data sets, and this helped to grow the database quite quickly. We were able to incorporate data that had been collated previously by other researchers involved in the project. So ALFIM2 is a database on manure application to land and the resulting ammonia emissions. The ADA is a UK-based data set from their work on nitrous oxide and ammonia emissions to soil. And then the ELF database is a French run database where they've collated emission factors and variables for housing, storage, and field application. So we incorporated the content of these as well as other existing data sets. So we included the latest data from the IPCC 2019 refinement. We also examined theses and conference papers and further peer-reviewed papers. From that, we developed the database. As I mentioned, we had a quality control step in here, and then we split all that data into field, storage, and housing, which has the field database has now been published. That came out in January, earlier this year, and the housing and storage databases will be described very soon in a publication led by Melinda Hosanna from INRAE in France. The database itself is already available, so that can be accessed at this address down here, www.dataman.org. dataman.co.nz. Access just requires a registration process. It's free, and that'll get you into that portal with the data available for downloading. The field-based emission factors, we've got just over 5,500 of them, focusing on nitrous oxide and ammonia. Then we have the storage-based emission factors, where we include methane as well, just over 1,300 of those. And then the housing-based emission factors, just over 2,000 of those as well. We collated the variables that influence these emissions, as well as characteristics of the trials, such as maybe it's the storage type or the treatment that was being examined, the soil conditions at the time, the climate at the time of the trials, how long the measurements ran for, what type of instrumentation was used to measure these emissions. A huge range of variables were collected and collated. I have to say, though, that there are many gaps, and that is the case with these types of projects. The database contains a large number of gaps because not every there are no publications that cover all the variables that we wanted to collect. Going into the database itself, the online portal, you'll see the data there. It looks a little bit like this. It's not so easy to look at this way, but you can download the data as a CSV file. You can also filter the data according to gas type or country or institute. A large number of options for filtering the data down the left-hand side. That goes, another product on that website is the histogram, so you can see the data visually, gives you a sense of the type of data and the number of values that exist for the various variables that are collated in there. In terms of the field-based emission factors, this gives you a sense of where the data has come from. As you can see on the left-hand side, 86% of the nitrous oxide emission factors coming from only 4 countries, and wet temperate climates representing 83% of the data set. That's pretty much quite heavily skewed, obviously, to wet temperate climates, not so much in terms of dry climates nor tropical climates. Similarly for ammonia, it's even more so wet temperate climates make up pretty much the whole database except for 2% of the data. Now, what's important to point out here is for Africa, we're seeing data coming from Zimbabwe and Kenya, and that's the only data that we have at the moment for nitrous oxide. When it comes to ammonia, we don't have anything coming from the whole African continent. Now, that's not to say it doesn't exist. It's it's just the case that we haven't been able to either locate data, or we just were restricted from a resource point of view to examine every source of information. We would like to see this change. We would like to see more data coming into the database from Africa, clearly also other parts of the world, Asia as well. But massive gap here with the African continent in terms of data. Storage emission factors, here we've got top right, we've got methane, a small amount coming in from Kenya, same for nitrous oxide, but that's it really, nothing on the ammonia side. And then when we look at the housing emission factors, we don't have any data in the database at the moment. So this is, we want to see this reversed. So this is an opportunity to hear from you, to be able to change this story and see more data coming through, collated into this database from African countries. Now, why would you want to do that? There's opportunities. A database like this presents an opportunity to develop new emission factors, and they could be at the country scale or regional or at the climatic zone scale. And being developed for different agricultural livestock systems. From this, inventory compilers can do better accounting of emissions from manure management systems, both at the national scale, but also at the farm scale. Another opportunity is assessing the effectiveness of mitigation strategies. That can help to design more efficient farming systems, and so that's clearly a big plus. And lastly, through this process, it can help to identify what activity data needs to be collected for emission inventories. So moving to that tier 2 more detailed inventory structure that can help to hone in on the right data to collect and therefore reduce the costs associated with collecting activity data, which is it's not a cheap process at all, and it's quite complex. So having targeted data to collect to improve the quality of an inventory calculation can clearly beneficial. So from this, I guess my message is a personal invitation. My statistician that I work with, he is continually saying we need more data. And that is very much the case, even more so for the African continent, because we have very, very little coming from there. Currently, we're in discussion with researchers at ILRI in Kenya. They are in the process of looking into publications that they have produced, where they have they've told me that they're going to be able to collate data from their research into these templates. So we're in discussion with them at the moment, and that's fantastic. So that's really great that we've got that link with ILRI now, and we would like to see more linkages like that. So yeah, very keen to hear from you. My email address is at the bottom there, and that, including that in the database, means that you can then download the richer, more broad database, as I mentioned earlier, and develop your own emission factors and do the analysis, work with a statistician, I recommend that, to ensure that you're developing robust revised emission factors, identifying key drivers, and then being able to evaluate those different mitigation options to help reduce emissions from farming systems. And that, of course, helps to also provide an opportunity to identify efficient food and food production systems. So that's all I was going to share with you. I just want to acknowledge the other team members of this project. They a large list there. They come from the countries that I mentioned at the start in terms of the different partners, and our funding for this came from the New Zealand government and from the UK government, as well as a lot of in-kind support from various research institutes in Europe. And lastly, this is so critical, very important to acknowledge all the researchers that are publishing their work. And through that, we can then grow this database and make it a more richer and deeper and broader set of information to help with the need to move countries from tier 1 to tier 2 reporting. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Tony. That was a wonderful presentation. Tony will be available to respond to questions that you may want or you may have. So please just make sure that you just drop those questions in the chat box. And if there are questions that we could answer or we can answer now, we'll be happy to do that. I've got people in the background who would be happy to answer some of those questions based on Tony's presentation. And the presentation also comes with an invitation to African researchers, especially those working within animal manure emissions. You've seen from the graphs and diagrams which Tony presented, there is a paucity of data in Africa, and there are massive data gaps from Asia and Africa. So it would be good to have more African researchers participating in such global initiatives. So I hope Dr. Wambui is listening from Kenya. I think this is one of your fields, and I would be happy to connect you to Tony. We'll move on with our programs, but please remember, if you've got any questions at this stage, just drop them in the chat box. We'll have a question and answer session after the next presentation. It is now my honor and privilege to just introduce a colleague of mine, Dr. Andreas Wilks. Andreas has worked in the natural resource management sector in Asia and Africa for over 20 years, with a focus on rangeland management and livestock. Since 2008, much of his work has focused on climate change mitigation, including developing GHG quantification methodologies for mitigation projects and supporting improvements in national GHG inventories and measuring, reporting, and verification systems. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just first see if I can share from here.
Great.
How is that appearing to you? In full presentation mode?
No, not yet. It's, yep. I think it's in presentation mode now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much to the organizers of this set of side events. It's been a really interesting 2.5 days or 3 sessions. I really enjoyed listening to a lot of the first and second days. Excellent work that's going on around the continent and some really good networking happening. I'm just briefly going to introduce about 2 initiatives currently supported by the New Zealand government around livestock greenhouse gas inventories and building the related capacities. So we have 2 projects. The first involves targeted support to selected countries. That in the map, those are the ones in green. And the support really is focusing on improving the level of sophistication of greenhouse gas inventories, specifically moving from tier 1 to tier 2, not just from a science, data and technical point of view, but also building the capacity of the government agencies responsible for inventory management and also other stakeholders, so that they're able to manage improved inventories on an ongoing basis. I'll talk about that in a minute. The second, shown in blue in the map, is a project just starting up where we're, instead of giving one-on-one support to different countries separately, we're piloting a regional approach to improving livestock greenhouse gas inventories that involves collating, sharing data, and engaging in capacity building and networking activities on a regional basis. So they're the 2 initiatives that I'll be presenting. So the first, both of these are really just starting up. We're sort of in the late stages of planning how to implement them, so I won't have a lot of really specific sort of preliminary results or anything that presenters were able to share yesterday. But just to tell you, these initiatives are up and running, and they're seeking to engage with stakeholders in every country, and so I'm sure it'll be relevant to some of you. So the first, the targeted support to countries. This is going to be running for another 3 years. It's funded by New Zealand's Ministry of Trade and Foreign Affairs, supported by the Ministry of Primary Industries. And it aims to improve the national GHG inventories, but also to encourage and facilitate participation in global science partnerships, and ultimately to support these countries to identify low emission livestock development options. So as I mentioned, the countries that we're engaging in one-on-one support around inventory improvement, that's Kenya, Malawi, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And how are we going about this? So technical support, so using national experts and international experts to build capacity of the key stakeholders involved in inventories in each country, and also funding related activities such as data collection to fill data gaps, which is probably the area that links most closely with the type of activities supported through Reform. So we've got improved inventories, which we're working on in all of the countries I mentioned, and that's both collating the data, putting them into inventory software, and training all the stakeholders in how to collate, analyze, and manage the data in a way compliant with the IPCC guidelines. There's also some. There will also be activities around establishing measurement hubs. This is in the early stages of formulation. The initial idea is for one hub to be in South Africa, because South Africa not only has quite a high level of technical capability, but it's also an educational and science hub in the Southern Africa region. And we're also looking into another measurement hub in East Africa. So the basic idea of the measurement hubs is to make sure that some key institutions have the equipment and facilities that they need and the technical capacities to use those equipment. And apart from doing their own research, then the measurements can also serve to improve the inventories of countries in their wider region. There will also be funding for regional research projects. So this is basically going to be either to fill data gaps identified when compiling the greenhouse gas inventory, for example, through household surveys, representative national censuses or surveys, or through measurements, either at the measurement hubs or in national institutions. And eventually, we haven't started really designing this part yet, but in the latter part of the 3-year program, pilot mitigation activities or design and implementation of MRV systems is another area of activity. The second program is targeting, or it's partnering with Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mozambique, and also enrolling South Africa, not so much as a beneficiary. They already have a tier 2 inventory, but because there's a lot of shared genetics, similar production systems between South Africa and these other countries. South Africa is also taking part to be able to collate all the data that South Africa has, all the relevant data that are in the other 4 countries, and put it into one Southern Africa regional database. So the idea here is that if you're in Botswana, you're making a tier 2 inventory, you have some national data, but you're missing some data. For example, if they don't have estimates of the live weight of particular types of animal, then they can look into the regional database and look, select from the most suitable production systems, the most suitable breeds, and they can estimate, therefore, the live weight for use in their inventory until such time as they have their own measurements. Or if you're in Mozambique and you already have data on live weight, you can use the database to validate your estimates by comparing your national values with the values in the Southern Africa database. So we will be implementing this project together with University of Pretoria, which manages the livestock part of the South Africa's inventory, and also with FANAPAN, the Food and Natural Resources Policy Network, if I got that acronym correct. The reason for working with Pretoria and Fanopan here is that at the moment there is no institution with a regional mandate that can provide ongoing technical support and capacity building to countries in the Southern Africa region. So we're hoping through engagement in this project to strengthen their ability to provide this regional support. So just briefly, this is from some previous activities supported by New Zealand, just to give you an idea of the kind of things that we will be doing in these two programs. So beginning in 2017, we supported Kenya to develop a Tier 2 inventory for dairy cattle. So this involved working with national experts to collate all of the data that they had in the country from publications, unpublished data, expert judgment if necessary. We devised a simple software in Excel that could compute the emission factors following the IPCC method, and we trained national experts and the State Department of Livestock, which manages the livestock inventory. We trained them in how to make the calculations, how to report in a way required by the national inventory. Another example from another region, so China, it already has a Tier 2 livestock inventory, but the way climate change policy is going in their country, they're gradually requiring each province in the country to have their own GHG inventory. So we worked with the national experts in China to draft guidelines for how to make livestock inventories at the province level. We tested it in one province, but also in 2 farms. Because we realized that eventually large livestock farms in China will need to report their emissions, so they would need some kind of a tool and guidelines for that. Based on the revised tested guidelines, we then trained provincial officials in how to do this. So it's really about getting the science taken up by the administrations in each country to serve the national climate change management policy objectives. And a final small example, in Indonesia in 2017, we supported them to establish some methane measurement facilities. Here you can see a green feed system that has been installed. We've trained them in the use of the system and provided ongoing advice on how to analyze the data. And the next stage then is how to integrate the results of that research with their national greenhouse gas inventory. So coming back to the main points, here are the 2 projects that are just getting up and running. In Zambia and Uganda, we just had the very initial kickoff workshops last week. So it's really just beginning. And just to mention one other thing, we have an ongoing partnership with the Africa LEDS partnership. That's Africa Low Emission Development Strategies Partnership. They're establishing a livestock community of practice, which is designed to share knowledge and experience across the whole of Africa around livestock and climate change issues, which very well complements our more targeted country-based work. So we plan to work in partnership with their livestock community of practice to share the experiences, knowledge, and lessons across the country, the countries in the region. So I think the plan at the moment is for that community of practice to launch in December. And we very much welcome not only policymakers, but also researchers, anyone involved in the sector. And I'll make sure that any news about the launching of that community of practice is shared through GRA and RUForum and other relevant networks. So thank you very much. That's some forward-looking things to watch out for, and I hope we're able to connect up at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for that very informative presentation. And I think we can just go straight to the question and answer session. I think I'll start with you since you are still holding on to the floor. There's a question here. Are the projects that are currently going on, will they directly measure GHG emissions from animals or rangelands in the countries you mentioned? How will this direct measurement be done?
So yes, there will be direct measurements. We're in discussion with potential partners in South Africa and in Kenya about what kind of equipment they already have, what kind of equipment that they would need. If you take, for example, in East Africa, in Kenya, ILRI has respiration chambers. They also have sort of gas chromatography for manure, methane, and nitrous oxide emission measurements. And we're exploring what's available in South Africa. The question really is how to make these physical hubs, so physical facilities, how to make that useful to the region. And that's something else that we'll be looking into, whether it's through promoting the mobility of professionals and students to these facilities, or whether it's through making sure that the facilities research on feeds, animal management practices that are relevant, not just in the country where the facility is located, but in the wider region. So that there will be measurements, and I'm sure once we get a clearer picture of how that's going to work, we'll be reaching out to you in the networks. And typically the inventories do pay attention to seasonal variability in ruminant feeds. I see the second question there. They do it in two ways. One, you could do it by having separate emission factors per season. But in the IPCC guidelines, emission factors are an annual emission factor. So if you use the seasonal weighted average of diet composition and therefore of feed digestibility and crude protein, the result should be the same as having two separate seasonal emission factors. But definitely seasonality is a very key thing to take account of, especially because both live weight and digestibility are key drivers of emission factors, and both of them vary through the seasons.
Yes, thank you, Andres. I thank you because you've just taken care of the follow-up question from John. I'll just go to Ekaterina now. There's a question here. What criteria is used to select suitable participants for the Cleavegratz scholarships? And when will the next round of scholarships be announced?
I might be able to help with that one. Thank you, Akeem. I'm Veronica, as Akeem definitely did mention at the beginning of our presentation that Katja gave. So I'm the other coordinator for the Cleavegratz program. So in terms of eligibility for students, the applicants must be currently enrolled in a PhD, and it must be in a field related to quantification of greenhouse gas emissions or carbon sequestration in agricultural systems. And they must be students from low and middle income countries, as Katja mentioned. In terms of the next round of Cleavegratz opening, we are still discussing when round 5 will be opened, though I would say at the earliest sometime in 2022. Just given COVID restrictions still making it difficult for awardees to get to their host countries, we do want to ensure that any future Cleavegratz are able to take up the opportunity. But what I would recommend that if you are keen to keep up to date with the Cleavegratz rounds, definitely follow the Twitter account. So that's at @GRA_GHG, which I'll put in the chat, or feel free to get in contact on our email address, which I'll also put in the chat, but that's cliffgratz@globalresearchalliance.org. So yeah, hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, Veronica. Ekaterina, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Veronica has covered it fairly
thank you
well.
very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Another question for Andreas. Is there scope for countries outside the project to participate in the capacity building or training that will be undertaken during these projects?
There are opportunities. So within the projects, the two projects that I mentioned, the capacity building will be targeted to people from these countries, and the relevant national partners will be reaching out to sector stakeholders. So that will include researchers, and through that there will be some opportunities. For those in other countries, I've just heard this week that we have colleagues in at the GRA or based in New Zealand who are specifically looking into this question, how to make available more capacity building opportunities to people in countries that were not listed in the projects that I mentioned. And thirdly, through the Africa-led partnership, there will also be further opportunities. So not just sharing of information and experience between countries, but Africa-led partnership itself may then on that basis also make available further training or capacity building opportunities. So I certainly hope so. The intention is not just to work specifically in those countries, but to have as broad a reach as possible, but keep, and we will make sure that we disseminate information about the opportunities available when we know what they specifically are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. The next question, I think this question was directed to Tony, but I'm sure Andreas or Hayden would be in a position to take the question. Considering the massive data gaps in the Global South, how should researchers from the Global South position themselves to participate effectively in global research networks? Hayden, are you there? Andreas, any thoughts? Sorry, this
it's a big one. Let me put it this way, just from our point of view as a northern partner looking for southern partners to work with. We are most, just put it very simplistically, we're most enthusiastic to work with researchers that are clearly committed on a particular topic, so that we know if we work with them for 3 to 5 years afterwards, they will continue to work on that topic. Ideally, where they have built a team of researchers with an expertise around this area, not just single individuals. And particularly from my point of view, particularly researchers who are really keen on the science, but also keen on linking the science with policy and practice. Because for us, it's not about fundamental science, it's about getting the science ultimately to be able to benefit the farmers. So yeah, that's just a very quick, without having let it pass through my brain for too long, a quick response on that. Just that's the northern perspective. How that looks from a southern point of view, I'll hand that back to you, Akeem.
Yeah. Thank you, Andreas. I knew you'll be able to take that question. Yeah, and thanks to Kacha and Veronica for the wonderful presentation and just the information on the Cleavegratz. That's awesome, guys. And we look forward to learning more about the project and how it's just going to progress in the next meetings or so. I think we're now going to just advance to the next part of our program, our next session, which is on setting up effective research programs to best provide evidence for policymakers. And we are going to have some perspectives from the European Union or the European Commission. On July 14, 2021, the European Commission adopted a set of intermediate proposals to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 55% from 1990 levels by 2030 as part of a broader European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is a set of long-term policy initiatives that define the European Union's international policy climate. Towards this goal, the European Green Deal provides a roadmap for a socio-ecological transition to a low-carbon future and the building blocks for a green economic growth strategy. Its implications for Africa are multifaceted, yet it offers the promise of enhancing EU-Africa relations if the right steps are taken now. To tell us more about this, I am pleased to introduce Piero Venturi, EU Science Counselor to the African Union. Piero is in charge of the political framework for research and innovation, cooperation with African stakeholders and member states. He has been working for the European Commission on food, agriculture, bioeconomy, and international cooperation with focus on Latin America and Africa for over 20 years. Piero, it's a great pleasure to have you in this fora. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Akim. I hope you can hear me. Could you confirm it, please?
Yes, please, loud and clear.
That's great. Well, I was reading my CV. What I didn't mention in that one is my present position, and I apologize for this. Actually, I'm the EU Science Counselor to African Union. This means that I'm located in Addis and in Addis Ababa, and I'm dealing about interaction with African Union colleagues in the Commission, in the African Union Commission. Well, I will share my presentation with my colleague Marta Iglesias. I would give the political overview, and then Marta will enter more in details about specific technical issues. So, well, the general picture. Well, with the new commission led by President von der Leyen, we had very clear political priorities. First of all, the new commission is a geopolitical one. So we are focused to get sustainable policies on specific issues for specific countries. This taking into account that the multilateral fora are the ideal scenarios where we want to play. We will have also bilateral relations, but our main focus is on multilateralism. And obviously this will bring us to play in a level playing fields. So full level of equal rights, transparencies, and democracies. And this means also that our game, our relationship will be guided by our values. So respect for international law, democracy, and equity with all the other countries. And this will bring us also to, and I said it, we said it internally as externally, we must have a stronger and more united voice in the world, all together with European countries. Well, this general political statement brought us to set up a communication on the global approach for research and innovation that was approved around a few weeks ago. And the aim is obviously to preserve the openness in research and innovation at the international level, and having a level playing field with reciprocity and fundamental values. This passing through our multilateral partnerships and facing together our main challenges at the level of climate change, digital, health difficulties, and innovation. That is also an issue that we want to bring on together, cooperating all together, improving all together this issue. So basically, we are going to get this through three main tools. The first one, as I say, is bilateral cooperation, also taking into account European interest and strategic autonomy. When we talk about low and middle income countries, we are fully interested to accelerate their sustainable and inclusive development, taking into account also the need to increase their knowledge-based societies, helping them to be more resilient. To do this, we need to work together with, as I say, with the other European member states and financial institutions in what we call the Team Europe approach. If we go to our activities in research and innovation, we have our new framework program, Horizon Europe, that started last June. This is a 7 year long program with a total budget around 100 billion euros. This is by far the biggest research and innovation program in the world, and it's fully open to any partners all over the world. Well, we will have, as I say, targeted actions with key partners, but a strong focus on low and middle income countries. This means that all the African countries will be fully supported, will be fully funded by the European Commission. Then we have also the possibility to have association. This is an opportunity that is offered to like-minded countries that will put money in the pot of the program, and at the same time will be sitting at the main table to decide about the topics, about the priorities, and we work together with us. Then it's also essential to safeguard our interest, the European interest, compared also to other key players at the global level. This is a slide you will see many times in the next 7 years. So this is the key slide for Horizon Europe. And the first two pillars has a strong international focus. The first one is on excellence on science. So it's dealing with grants, individual research programs, and also on research infrastructure. The second one is dealing with global challenges. And you can see among the different clusters, we have some that are really focusing on our topics. So food bioeconomy, natural resources, agricultural and environment, but also climate, energy, and mobility. As I said, the program is fully open for cooperation with partners, researchers, innovators of any nationality that can apply for grants, can apply in our cooperative projects. And at the same time, we have targeted actions specifically relevant for well-defined countries. And at the same time, we have also action flagged for being specifically relevant for international cooperation. Then we have actions as the one focused on Africa, the Africa Initiative. And well, maybe someone should mute. Okay. And well, the Africa Initiative that will include main actions for the first 2 years of our work program. But just to give you a flavor, I will pass through very quickly. We have 1/5 of our total topics in the first 2 years that are dealing with international cooperation, with a total budget of 3 billion euros. When we talk about the Africa Initiative, this is a decision that has been taken during the first ever EU-AU RNI ministerial last year, when it was decided to set up a long-term cooperation based on 4 key issues: public health, green transition, innovation and technology, and capacity for science. You can find all the information about the topics in the EU portal, where you will find well, details about the topics, about the rules, about the deadlines, and I think this could be of your interest. Well, just I pass through these slides just to give you an overview about the complexity and the impact on international research that our program can have, just taking into account, as I say, just the first 2 years of the program. If you just spot something of your interest, obviously you should go to the portal to check if this is an interesting option for you. And then here we are on cluster 6 on where we have topics on biodiversity and ecosystems, on food, and on specifically on the impact of this on communities. So this just to give you an idea of the topics. I selected just the ones on a green transition. The one with the blue background are already expired, while the others will have a deadline next year. Okay, here you find the budget. These ones are dealing mainly with agroecological approaches and food issues. Then there are the others focusing on energy, nexus, water, energy, food, and modeling. And then the others that are focusing on nature-based solutions and cooperation with the Convention of Biological Diversity, and well, and the other on climate change actions on biodiversity. So our activities are also working through working groups that are very efficient. Just to give you an example, Marta later will go into details about the working group on food, nutrition, security, and sustainable agriculture. But well, just to show you that we have working groups dealing with different issues. And at the same time, we try to work internally with our colleagues dealing with international cooperation. So they offer opportunities to work through all the chain, while we get focused mainly on, obviously, on the research and innovation aspects. But we try to create synergies working together. Well, just to mention the Marie Curie Sklodowska actions. These are very well known, very famous all over the world grants for PhD, postdoc, senior researchers that offer opportunities for following doctoral programs, collaborative research, fellowship schemes all over the world. Before the focus was on Europe, now we are really setting up programs for working also in Africa and other countries. Well, we are also looking at the future, and we are setting up an innovation agenda as it was proposed 1 year ago. The target of this innovation agenda is to translate our efforts in a positive impact really on the ground, to favor sustainable growth, and the increasing of job, and at the same time to set up a long-term and sustainable cooperation model. This agenda has been highlighted during the Foreign Affairs Ministerial EU-Africa a few days ago, and it will be one of the main outcomes of the next EU-AU summit that will be held next February. So we are really working hard on it, and we hope to get great results. Here you'll find links to several websites that can be very useful to know what we are doing, what is going on, and if you are interested to enter in our programs, also to find partners, to know who are the key players in Europe to work with. That's it. I leave you to Marta with the word of my commissioner, Maria Gabriel, that words full of hope concerning our new framework program. And at the same time, I also glad to show you the words of Professor Sarah Achbor, that is the African Union Commissioner for Science and Technology. She will leave her post next month after many years of great job, great cooperation. That's it. It's all from my side. I leave the floor to Marta.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Yes, indeed, Marta will just take over with and provide us more details, but let me just introduce her to the other. I realize I should have probably done that earlier on. And just to mention that these presentations will be shared with all participants through the GRA and RUFORUM websites. Yes, next, as earlier mentioned by Piero, we've got Marta Iglesias. Marta is a Senior Research Program Officer at the European Commission Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development. She has over 20 years experience working on agricultural research and innovation, and is currently working under the Horizon Europe, and in particular on the implementation of the food and nutrition security and sustainable agriculture roadmap in support of a green transition in Africa to sustainable and resilient agri-food systems. Marta, welcome. The floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if you see it properly. Okay, there we go. Hold a second. There. Should be okay now?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
perfect. Thank you very much for your introduction. Thank you, Piero, for opening the floor for me. So, and I'll thank you all of the organizers for the invitation to be here with you today. I think we have a political momentum where research and innovation has a key role to play in achieving these goals of fighting climate change, but also to achieve our commitments on the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. This role is recognized as a key element of the European Green Deal, and is backed by the new research and innovation programs that you have heard today, the Horizon Europe. But when it comes to the relationship with Africa, we have this strategy adopted last March in 2020, where it was stressed that we have the objective of having a knowledge society economy based on research and innovation and education. So you probably already know, but we have promoting quite a lot. The European Green Deal is the growth strategy that we launched in December 2019. And it sets out Europe as a first climate neutral continent by 2050. So this overarching goal is further, let's say, concretized through specific strategies, including the climate law, the zero pollution action plan, the biodiversity strategy, but also the farm to fork strategy. So with the European Green Deal, we want to turn all these challenges that we are having today, we are experiencing in Europe and in Africa, into opportunities across all areas and making transition just and inclusive for all. So the farm to farm strategy is at the heart of the European Green Deal, and it addresses the challenges of sustainable food systems that recognize the links between healthy people, healthy society, and a healthy planet. But let me say that the European Green Deal does not concern only the European Union, because it can be, we need the help of our external, let's say, global partners, and we can together propose a new, let's say, major shift towards a sustainable, green and balanced development of the interconnected world that we are living in today. So what are the overall objectives of this farm to fork strategy? Are to reduce the environmental and climate footprint of the EU food systems, to strengthen its resilience, ensuring food security in view of this climate change and biodiversity loss. We want to lead a transition, a global transition towards competitive, sustainable food systems, but also we want to tap into new opportunities that will open up. So what do we understand by sustainable food system? It has to have sustainability in the 3 pillars of these dimensions, no? Which is the economic, environmental, and social. So the economic dimension includes aspects as jobs, incomes, and a fair share of the added value for farmers and for fisheries. The social dimension includes healthy diet, vital rural coastal areas, better animal welfare, but also ensure a just transition for those most concerned by this transition to sustainable food systems. And the environmental dimension implies a food system that is in harmony with what we are hearing today, low greenhouse gases emissions, reduce pollution to levels that are no longer harmful, and enhance biodiversity. So based on this definition of the sustainable food systems, we can conclude that today our food systems are not sustainable. So we have to reverse this situation, and we need for that bold actions that may transform the way we produce, but also how do we process food and consume. So we need to change nutrition partners in achieving these goals that we have set before. So the European Green Deal, as I mentioned before, and it's a farm to fork strategy, needs our international dimension. So we are all concerned by the climate change, environmental degradation, and the consequences that it may have, which is health dangers. So the global problems like this, we need the global responses. We have to work together. So the farm to fork strategy promotes a transition towards sustainable food systems, developing green alliances on research and innovation that will help us to ensure a sustainable use of natural resources with nature-based solutions. So this includes, of course, our relation and cooperation with Africa. And for that, we have already a partnership, as Piero mentioned before, which is the European Union, African Union Food, Nutrition, Security and Sustainable Agriculture Partnership. So as I also mentioned, in March last year, the Commission published this strategy towards a comprehensive strategy with Africa, which includes a focus on a step-up research and innovation cooperation. But if we also see the global EU response to the COVID-19 that we published in a document last April, it also has a strong focus on research and innovation cooperation with Africa. So as you can see, both are in line with European also Green Deal priorities that include to develop a green growth model, improving business environment and investing in climate research and innovation. So our long-standing partnership we have for food, nutrition, security and sustainable agriculture will help us, Europeans and African, science-based to support the needed excellence and knowledge across both continents to achieve these goals. So under this partnership, we aim to take actions that will enable these global transitions that will make them more resilient, equitable, and with low carbon emissions. So we are investing already in these green transitions with solutions that has an impact in all these 3 pillars of the sustainability. So since 2016, this partnership is implementing a roadmap that they have developed jointly in 2016, and it has 10 years to be implemented. The implementation is proposing and investing on research and innovation actions that support the 4 pillars of this roadmap, which is the intensification of agricultural production systems, the food systems for nutrition, and the expansion and improvement of agricultural markets and trades. So based on the past experience analysis and the new political orientation, this partnership should contribute with knowledge and innovations to unlock the potential of African and Europe food systems and make progress towards this food nutrition security and sustainable and greener agriculture. So in the Farm to Fork strategy, the EU-Africa partnership is an instrument that can be supported through research and innovation to move towards this overarching goal. So in this context, the future activities of the partnership will build on existing activities and benefit to the extent possible from this investment into maximizing the results of this investment, valorization, giving value of the results and providing more out of the market, out of the lab results and bringing them to market. So as Piero already mentioned, we are working in this green transition, and just want to raise your attention on sorry, on the focus that we have open on agroecology as a mean to work together within the scope of the Farm to Fork strategy as well to climate change adaptation and mitigation. Other topics that will be also relevant and probably be financed later on are sustainable management and land governance, inclusive and fair agri-food value chain, nutrition and healthy diet, prevention and responses to food crisis, integrated waste management, and plant and animal health, welfare, and food safety standards. So currently in the First World Program on the Horizon Europe, we have, as Piero mentioned, this African initiative. The idea is this initiative was born in July ministerial meeting. And the idea is to strengthen this collaboration that we have with Africa already, responding to these priorities, these 4 pillar priorities: the green transition, the public health, the technology and innovation, and the capacities for science. So in particular, I just raise your attention to the topic on agroecological approaches in the African agriculture systems, because the idea of this topic is to implement one key area that has been already identified of common interest in both regions, and that has the potential to support food system and nutrition security, while at the same time restore and preserve the ecosystem services and the biodiversity that we need to have within sustainable agriculture. So to harness the multiple sustainability benefits from agroecological approaches, we understand that it's important to have an enabling environment and including policies and investments to make this a reality. So this topic will go into this aspect and will support, of course, this transition that I'm talking about. So the FNSSA roadmap has also opened for other calls for proposals, which may be of your interest, like African Union, European Union combating all forms of malnutrition, or the topic on the food cities in Africa. So I invite you to visit our research and innovation page, and in particular, take a look at the Info Day. We had an Info Day session where we wanted to present all these topics, and we open for questions and answers. We had this event last Monday, and it's recorded and available online, where you can get more insight of what are these topics requesting and you may want to put forward a proposal. And I'm just going to finalize with this infographic, with I thought it is very clear where this partnership, what is the mandate of the partnership, how it started within this Joint Africa strategy, has been developed a mandate to explore the first priority area, which was ensuring food nutrition security and sustainable agriculture. And since then, how are we implementing this 10 years roadmap? You can see all the project has been identified and mapped between these 4 pillars of this strategy. And this project is not only African Union grant project or European Union research project, but also country projects that have been financed in this scope of these activities. They're all open and available and accessible for you. And with this, I would like before I conclude my intervention, I just would like to recall a couple of the elements that I just mentioned now. First, that international cooperation is important if we want to really succeed in building food systems.
My drinks!
Okay.
Somebody there with their microphones, please, IT, make sure you mute them.
I think it's okay now. Okay, so as I mentioned,
Please continue.
we have to work together if we want to tackle these problems of unsustainable food systems, to prevent the social consequences, in particular in Africa, because you have a very growing population. But also we want to work together toward these green and more sustainable food systems that will open opportunities for innovations and for the creation of jobs and growth in Africa and in Europe. We want to profit from that as well. And that Research and Innovation Horizon Europe program has dedicated an Africa strategy for you to encourage your participation, to give you the hand to work together toward these common objectives. And just to know that this partnership on food nutrition security and sustainable agriculture has a well-established instrument that will keep on working. And I think you should be part of this partnership, because you probably interested not only on the results, but also in performing the research and innovation activities that it offers. So finally, just my final word is we need to give visibility to the achievements made in terms of research and innovation investment, and to turn these results into solutions, tangible solutions for food nutrition security that will help this transition to sustainable food systems, and at the end that can bring benefits for all. So for that, we need you, key actors, let it be researchers, policymakers, farmers, entrepreneurs, consumers, startups, associations. We need all of you to take part in these actions in order to make these projects a real reality. So for this, I'm just thank you for your attention, and I look forward for this great cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta, for that presentation, just providing us more details on what Piero had presented. I think I'll just let's just go into a question and answer segment now. I will try to just get through as many questions as I can in the next few minutes. I will be asking the two presenters the questions. If your question is not answered in this session, or you see that it has been dismissed, this doesn't mean it won't be answered later. We'll definitely take care of that. I think we're just constrained with time. Interesting presentation on initiatives from the EU. I think that these questions go to both of you, really. The first one, it says the conversations have been taking place between the EU and the African Union, and this is at a very high political level. How are we going to ensure that the benefits from these initiatives trickle down to the local communities where agriculture and development occurs?
Marta, you want to
I'll
start?
take it.
It's up to you. I can go.
Okay, I will try also. So what we do at political level, at a very high level, is to agree on the priorities for let's say investment. And then through these activities, we try to engage in projects with the local communities as well. And those actors are, for example, in the research programs that we finance in the European Union, we ask for the concept of multi-actor approach, which means involve farmers and local communities since the beginning of the concept of the project, let's say, to make sure that the actions that are going to receive finance from the European Union or the African Union really helps to meet a need that is, let's say, born on the ground. So we make and we put a lot of emphasis to involve all those end users, farmers, to work together with these researchers or innovators to make sure that we will have practical results. And we are even more, Piero mentioned it, to invest on bringing those research even more visible, to make them more visible, so more people, let's say, can profit from that and create services or applications that can be used for those, let's say, who are in need of this information. So we try as much as possible to involve communities. So from both sides, huh? Maybe Piero, you want to add?
Yeah, well, I just want to integrate, mentioning that is a kind of cascade process. So, well, at political level, there are decisions taken. It's important that African member states, European member states, they bring these activities into actions in their countries. To do this, it's important that they have people, what we call national contact points. So people that know the program and can explain the opportunities to the communities, to the local people. And I would like to mention as a very successful example of this, the program AU Research Grants. That is a program where the European Commission, through the relevant work of the African Union Commission, is supporting research activities in agriculture and basically in food and agriculture that are focused on communities. So, the universities, the research centers are working on the chain, but on the results that must have a societal impact, an economical impact on the communities. And we have seen, I was 2 weeks ago visiting Mozambique, and we have seen very relevant results from this kind of projects.
Oh, thank you very much, Piero, for that intervention. Marta, again, what makes the farm to fork strategy special or different? Considering that there have been related interventions or programs from the European Union, how is this program different, and what is it that it's going? What is it going to do, which other previous programs have not managed to achieve?
Okay, the farm to fork is a strategy. So we set a plan. We want to achieve some objectives by 2050, but we're going to have some milestones by 2030. So we will be working to reach these milestones to ensure that we arrive in 2050 to the, let's say, final objectives. It is true that there has been other programs, and we will build on what these programs have already, let's say, offer as experiences and results. But we will be working very clear with one big commitment, which maybe we were not so aware before, which is this problem of the climate change. So as a strategy for the European Green Deal, we will make these sustainable food systems, but we will care more than ever for those who are, let's say, touched by this transition. No? So we will be having this 3-pillar sustainability, which in the past wasn't there. So now we want to make sure that whatever we do, it has also a positive economical impact for everybody. While in the past, maybe we look only into environmental, it's okay, or economic is okay, but no environmental. Now we have the challenge to work with these 3 dimensions to move to this first 2030 and then 2050. But of course, past experience are considered when we draft it. So it has to be realistic, but at the same time challenging. So this is why we are doing investments to move toward these objectives now, because 2030 is around the corner. So
yeah, probably the last piece, question for Pierre. You talked about developing a long-term sustainability model of cooperation, and who are the partners? Is it just at country level, or can individual researchers from universities be considered as partners in these programs?
Well, let's say that we are moving at different levels. So we move at the regional level with the African Union Commission. They identify key players, for example, the African Academy of Science, NEPAD, and we are working with them. At the same time, we try to set up bilateral relationships with the main players in Africa at country level, and at the same time, we strongly working also with the scientists, the top scientists, the institutions. We have different working groups, as for example the one that Marta is chairing, where we have a strong participation of African top scientists, and we need their cooperation to have the African view. You know, when I'm talking about the innovation agenda, now there is an European working group and an African working group that are working together, putting together information. And this is important because this information will reach our leaders at the summit. So it's really a bottom-up approach in this case. The scientists, they really have a role to play in this kind of political decisions. And well, when I mention scientists, I also mention innovators, start-uppers. They are also super involved into the issue.
Wow, thank you very much. And not to hold you any longer, I wanted to conclude, but I've got 2 more questions that have just popped in here. And I just hope you'll be kind enough to take them too. For Marta and Piero, what are the research mechanisms implemented in the beneficiary countries to reduce vulnerability of populations and measures the impacts? Not so sure about what is meant by that. Or maybe let me just say what mechanisms are in place to ensure effective implementation in beneficiary countries.
Marta, you want?
Okay, I'll have a try. So when we open this call for proposals, we take into consideration what are the impacts we want to achieve by projects. So we make clear that we need to go through these actions to a certain goal. So the proposals, what they presented, they should consider how they are going to achieve the impact through the actions that they propose in the projects. So of course, we ask to reduce this vulnerability of the populations, particularly in the rural areas. And for that, we specifically ask project to propose. How are you going to achieve this? How are your actions, for example, on agroecology, will be of the benefit of this population? how close are we going to bring the outputs to them, and how useful can they be, taking into consideration their environmental conditions where they live and they do their businesses, let's say. So is it that they need new markets? Is it that they need more, let's say, capacity building or training? Is it that they need to explore new ways of producing? So all these things have to be, let's say, proposed by the project, and then they have to implement it on the ground. And then when the project is finished, we can see, because not all the research projects are always successful, because sometimes they fail. But even if they fail, we learn from that to make it better next time. So it's not a, let's say, a failure as such, it's just a learning process. And now in the Commission, we are even working another step forward to say, okay, there's many things very useful. People don't really sometimes get acquainted with the knowledge or with these possibilities. We are analyzing how to build the bridge between what is available and what is used by the end users. And as you say, these populations, in particular, I say rural areas, but in cities as well. So we are working on this also. But as I said, when we write the topics, when we call for project, we ask to have concrete and measurable impacts on these very, let's say, important areas that the African Union and the European Union consider that we need in order to advance. So maybe Piero, if you want to say something else.
No, I think you integrate, you cover perfectly all the issues. Yeah, I'm fully satisfied.
Thank you very much. I think I'll end with two questions which I can combine from Benson and Galfato. Galfato is interested in sustainable intensification of agriculture or agroecological farming, whilst Benson is interested in working on research on water quality. And Benson is asking, does the EU-Africa Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture support master's degree students, whilst Galfato is asking whether this same initiative supports PhD students interested in intensification of Africa's agriculture or agroecological farming. Very personal questions.
Okay, let me try to give us some answers. So in principle, we, through the FNSSA so far, we have been granting, let's say, financial support for projects. It is, let's say, PhD or master students are doing research, let's say, work within the activities of the project, and they belong, of course, to a university or any research institute. Yes, they will get support also because what they are doing is in line with the project is doing. But it's not, let's say, like Piero was before mentioning this Marie Curie grants. This is more a project grant that we give to the entity. And then the entity decide who are the researchers working in which field, which is of the interest of the project, let's say. And then through that, they can also, let's say, work and get support for the research. But it's not a, let's say, personal grant for researchers. Is a project. So the money we give it to the Performance Research Institute, even in university or any other sort of institute. And that institute has their own researchers, could be a doctor, could be a student, could be a master, performing research under cost for doing that, because it will be, let's say, for the implementation of the project will be covered.
If I can integrate what Marta was saying, I strongly suggest to have a look at the Marie Curie grant websites, because now they are increasing the number of opportunities. As Marta say, they can have individual grants, but they can have, for example, dual system for PhD, so getting PhD in degrees in different places, or create also a network of universities for PhD. And now they set up also this return grants for PhD holders that want to come back to their home countries. So they are also offering opportunities to come to work to Africa. really taking advantage of the European connections, European funding. So, and well, the evaluation of these proposals is done not depending on the subject. So they are totally horizontal issues. The proposals are evaluated on the quality of science, as Marta say, on the quality of the hosting institutions, and on the quality of the student, future PhD student.
Thank you very much, Piero, and thank you very much, Marta, for the wonderful presentations. And as I had mentioned earlier on, with your permission, we'll seek to share those presentations with the participants. I'm sure there is a lot of information which you provided and all those links which the participants could look at and get more detailed information. This is so big and it's not possible to just share everything within one session like this. Otherwise, we are grateful for the good work, and we know the European Union has been an all-weather partner to the African continent. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and just for being in this fora today. We're going to move on now. I will just take this time to just hand over the meeting to one of my colleagues, Selma from the RUFORUM Secretariat. Selma is the technical specialist, research and innovations at the RUFORUM. Her role at the Secretariat is to design and oversee implementation of research and innovation activities at the Secretariat. She started her career as a research assistant at University of Namibia, where she managed the Foxtail Millet project activities. She serves in the African Plant Breeders Association Graduate Students Working Group as a secretary, and holds a master's degree of science in plant breeding and seed systems from the Makerere University in Uganda. Selma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Akim. Thank you so much for a very good sharing and for taking it up for being our host today, and well done for that. We are going to get into the next session. I was already introduced by Akim. So we are going to get into the next session, which is almost our final session of the day. And we're going to have parallel sessions. Just a moment, sorry for the noise. Okay, we are moving in the next part of the sessions, which is the parallel sessions. And we are going to have 3 breakout sessions, where the first, just a moment as I try to share my slide again, sorry for that. Okay, we are actually going to do our parallel sessions under the topic of the role of African agricultural universities and their contribution to the policy development. So we are going to have 3 breakout rooms. And the first room will be talking on identifying characteristics of an effective science policy interface. And the second room will talk on the barriers between policymakers and the researchers. And then the third room will be identifying practical steps or strategies that agricultural universities and international organizations should take to strengthen the science policy advice. We encourage that you participate in these breakout rooms where you are going to be allocated, and someone is going to start allocating the rooms immediately after I introduce to you the chairs of the rooms. And after that, if you may need to accept on your screen, kindly look at your screen and press yes if in case you are being asked, or you get a prompt on your screen to join the room. And I will be checking with every room to see how the progress is going. So first, before we move on to our rooms, I will introduce to you our chairs. The first room is supposed to be chaired by Franke, but he may be absent, and we are going to have another chair, a new chair in that. Dr. Alice Mutitimwetwa, the Deputy Executive Secretary for Program Development and Implementation at the Forum Secretariat, will be the rapporteur of the session of the Room 1. She is from Zambia, and she joined Ruforum from the University of Zambia, where she worked as a Deputy Director for Research and Postgraduate Studies. And she has quite a lot of experience in the area of agriculture. She has gained several awards, including the Norman Borlaug International Agricultural Science and Technology Fellowship Program in 2012. She holds a PhD from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in the United States. She will be the rapporteur for the first room. The second room will be chaired by Professor Anthony Jidudu. He's a senior lecturer at Makerere University in the Department of Geomatics and Land Management at Makerere University in Uganda. He's also a co-PI for one of our projects which were just presented yesterday, and he was one of our presenters. Professor Jidudu holds a master's in environmental monitoring from Cranfield University, Bedford in the United Kingdom, and a PhD in geomatics from University of Cape Town, South Africa. He will be chair for room 2, and the rapporteur will be Dr. Egeru Anthony. He is a manager of the training and community development at the Forum Secretariat. Dr. Egeru has quite a wide experience also in academic and especially in carrying out research, where he has a score of 10.34 and an age index of 4 with 13,700 reads and reviews in academia, showing how much impact he participates to the research and to the research area. He has multifaceted experiences in research, including in system ecology with a focus on management of dryland ecosystems, early warning system, rangeland, just to mention FPU. He will be the rapporteur for the room 2. And we come to our final room. We will have Professor Dosa. We might have to check if he's in, but if he's not, we shall also improvise. He's one of our PI who presented yesterday from the University of Abomi Calavi, and he also had a wide experience in academia. And this session will be rapporteured by Professor Majaliwa Manjalolo. He's executive assistant to the executive secretary of the Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture here at the Forum Secretariat. He is from DRC, and he has taught in several universities, including Haramaia University, Makerere University, and others. He also has been involved in the development of several master's and doctoral programs in the continent. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me allow our technical team to allocate us to different rooms. And again, I plead for your great participation. We have 30 minutes to dwell on those topics, and then we can come back to the main session and share the incomes from the groups, and then we can have a wrap up of the day. Thank you very much. I wish you a good deliberation. Wow, welcome. Welcome back to the group, to the main session. Thank you so much. I hope everyone is in. Amitu, are all the groups closed?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. That was very short. Actually, I was talking, so my team member might be laughing because I was talking, and then all of a sudden I'm returned to the room. But I hope all the group discussions went on very well, and that we build on. We got something that we can report back to the main house so that we learn from each other on what was discussed in the other groups. So without wasting time, let me just welcome Dr. Alice Mwetwa to give us the discussion that what was discussed in room 1. To give us feedback from room 1 in 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Selma. I recognize that you're emphasizing the 5 minutes, so I will keep within time. So what I'll do is very quickly, I will share my screen if this is okay. Let me see. Okay. So our group was dealing with identifying characteristics of an effective science policy interface. And the specific question really is, how does an effective science policy interface look like? In our group, we had members Hatim, Frida, Akim, who also chaired the session. Thank you, Akim, for a fantastic job. We had Innocent, Mabel, Mayosko, Fayami, Emmanuel, Mary, Jolene, and myself. So in that group, we discussed the following issues. First and foremost, we wanted to get a common understanding of what the science policy interface is. And we agreed that these are linkages between science and policy, and that science, when we look at science itself, it's meant to influence policy and practice at the local level. And so therefore, we are looking at the linkage between researchers and politicians. And then we developed our, like this. So we identified the following characteristics of a good interface. Number 1 is that science component should speak to the policy as well as the social environment. So the detail of that is that there's need to have a good understanding of what that environment is by the scientists. So how then do we ensure that happens? Number 1 is that science should provide the data that is required to support the policy and social environment. And therefore then there's need to make outputs visible, which requires us to have effective communication of science and scientific outputs. This will require, in some instances, building capacity for communicating with politicians, as well as having effective approaches for engagement with politicians. And there's need to disseminate outputs effectively so that they be included in national and development plans, but also at the regional level. There's need to identify ways of engagement. The second characteristic is policy should be informed by the scientific outputs. So we recognize that one of the issues that is a challenge is that politicians sometimes make very quick policies just so they can win elections. So the idea then is that policy should not be formulated for winning elections. So what needs to be done is that policy formulating institutions as well as politicians should collaborate with research institutions. Emotions should be removed at all costs. And then programs that are any funding or investment program should speak to what the science needs, and that the national science agenda or regional science agenda, for that matter, should be able to align with institutional research agenda so that it's effective. And then thirdly, there should be an exchange of ideas through a regular platform. And so this one is that they should be regular meetings between scientists and politicians. And this would require that the stakeholder platforms are made, and also deliberates, holding or hosting of exhibition seminars, as well as development and fronting of policy papers be had. Then lastly, there should be free flow of ideas and mutual recognition of roles of science and politics, and recognizing that both science and politics indeed do have their own role. So what must we do? Science needs to be interpreted appropriately so that it plays that role and it therefore then influences policy. And universities need to position themselves in terms of their strength so that they can, contribute in the most effective way to policy formulation. There's need to align the political objectives with science objectives. With that, thank you very much for giving us the and to report back to the room. Thank you so much back to the room. Thank you so much on behalf of my team. I submit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mwetwa. You have set the pace too high for us, who are also supposed to report back to the room. That was a very good reporting. And now from room 2, I was also caught red-handed and I had to rapporteur the session. And I'm going to quickly share my slides, may not be well organized, but at least for following purposes, just to show what we have captured in group 2. Just a moment. Okay, this was session 2, sorry, it's not 1. This was parallel session 2, and we discussed on, we looked at the barriers between scientists or researchers and the policymakers, and these are some of the things that came out, and so I may have to just explain the points as they come in. So the first point which was raised in our discussion as a barrier is really the communication. As scientists, we do not know the communication language to communicate to the policymakers. They do not understand the publications we come out with, but they understand policy briefs. So our scientists are not trained in a way of knowing how to develop policy briefs. We got a very good example from WASCAL, and where they say that they train their students right from the proposal development. They are supposed to come up with a policy brief at the end of their research. So each student, and that helps students to make relevant research, which is relevant to inform policymakers. So I think that's one thing. And then we have lack of awareness from policymakers because we have that gap between the researchers and policymakers. So it came out that when we are developing our proposal or our research, we do not engage. Sometimes as researchers, we fail to engage the stakeholders, which are policymakers, and those are the people who are supposed to help us in effectively communicating our research to live from the universities to the community. And then we have a lack of funding and support from policymakers. This can also be a result because of being unaware. So we need the awareness into the policy system. And we have a lack of participation for scientists in the policy sector. Most of the scientists do not want to get engaged in policies sector, and we are not taking part into politics. So as it is, that area remains with people who are not interested in science, but just into for what they are doing. And another challenge is, in case now we get policymakers who are probably well informed with science and all that, and they are able to follow up our science. The challenge is that we also get a challenge of lack of follow-up into our policy that we develop, because policymakers, their positions expire. So the one who was in the office when the project was being developed, by the time the project is ending, everything was going on well, the term in office has expired, and so you have to start afresh. So that follow-up becomes a problem and a challenge in communicating effectively to the community. And then we also had the limited access to quality climate data to inform policy. So this was raised up in our discussion that we do not have enough data on climate, especially related to the greenhouse gas emission, enough to inform the policies. And it came in at a good time that we just had a good presentation from GRA, which was talking on data management. And you can also see that this point is very relevant because from what they communicated, they did not show any data from Africa. So we leave, this point is, I think I've already covered it up. We leave the policy formulation to lawmakers, to lawyers and civil society organizations. And then for us, we only remain in research, but those people do not understand the implementation of the research. And so the process, I mean, we need that link. So that's some of the barriers that were raised in our discussion. So thank you very much. And our group was being chaired by Professor Anthony Dududu. We were blessed to have quite a lot of participants. I may not have taken note of all of them. We have Professor Kone. We had, I think we had quite many, and I'm sorry, I've not taken note of the participants in our group, but thank you very much. Okay, I almost forgot that I was the chair, so I was going to mute my microphone and wait for the chair. But let me move on to the next room. We had Yamungu from room 3 who was taking notes. So please, the floor is yours. Thank you. So just a little bit before Yamungu comes in, Boniface Yamungu is an intern in entrepreneurship at the Forum Secretariat. He works here as an intern, and he mainly deals with entrepreneurship and also under the TAGDEF program to implement the projects under TAGDEF. So please, Yamungu, you are most welcome. Are you talking or you are muted?
Yamungu is set up as an interpreter. Let him use your team's computer.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Come here. No.
Yamungu, you can go back to your computer.
Okay, now they have removed me as an interpreter. I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear you well now. You can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For us, we have been discussing. Yeah, we discussed about identifying practical steps, strategies that agricultural universities and international organizations will take to strengthen the science and policy advice. So what we come up with is that we need, first of all, to look into policies because we might be willing to do something, yet our government or our countries are not willing of what we have for us to implement what we are planning to do as researchers or universities. So the first step is to look into the policies. Are the policies in line with what we are planning to do? Otherwise, we shall do what we want to do, but it will have no impact. That is the first step. The second is we need to improve is communicating sciences. Like, for example, you might be, the way you are communicating with the other scientists is not the same way you need to communicate with other stakeholders like farmers. For example, we have publications. When you publish, the way a scientist can understand your publication is totally different from what the way the farmer can understand it. So we need to package the message in the way that scientists can understand, and also policymakers as well as farmers can be able to capture the message in those, the output of the various research that we do. We need also to look at our innovation or the different adaptation measures. those which are key and package them for the users. So we also, for example, we've identified some adaptation measures. We need to inform them to the users who are the farmers or policymakers so that they are able to see, oh, this is what has been found and this is what we are supposed to do it. Another thing is we need to build the capacity of our policymakers, because some of the policymakers do not know what we are trying to do. So even if you have your output for whatever you've done in your research, if the policy ignores what you found, so it will have no impact because they will not include it into their process when they are making their policies. So they need to be, their capacity need to be built so that they are able to understand what we are doing. Another thing is we need to zone the areas. So we need to have the different categories because, for example, when we are identifying adaptation measures, the adaptation measures that work for Kampala will not be the same that will work for Dar es Salaam, for Kigali, for Nairobi, for Kinshasa, and wherever, or something like that. So you need to identify, you zone, and you say these adaptation measures, for example, are specific for this specific area. So that will help people not to use the adaptation measures as a broad aspect, but use them according to their specific area, and that will be according to the result from the research we do. We also need to identify scientific gaps. Of course, you might find that our research institution and universities have some gaps, and those gaps need to be identified. And once we identify them, we can be able to overcome, to see, now, if these are the gaps, now what do we need to do to overcome these gaps and proceed to the results that are needed within the community, within the policymakers and other stakeholders. We also need to build the linkages between scientists and policymakers. So whenever it's being done by scientists should also be approved, or a policymaker should be informed in advance so that they are aware of what is being done. In case you found the result, the way you communicate, the time you communicate to the policymakers, they already know that this was being done and these are the results. So what are the actions that we need to do for us as policymakers? We also need to build a relationship amongst institutions, universities, research institutions. We also have, for example, international organization, whatever. So we need to build relationship among us, the institutions, so that whatever we do, if we are lacking something, we can get assistance from another institution, and that will help us to reach what we are planning to do. Also, we need also to cooperate and partner between universities and international organizations. Why? Because universities will have their scientists with knowledge, with capacity, but maybe they don't have funding for them to conduct research that will have impact on the community. So, but the cooperation and the partnership between universities and international organizations will come up and will bring that interaction, so that international organization can provide funding to universities, and the universities can also come up with results from their research, which will help those also international organizations and the community and different stakeholders within the whole process. We need also to do a participatory research. That is what I said before, as they are almost the same, linkages between scientists and policymakers. So we need to do a participatory. In whatever we are doing, whatever we are researching, policymakers are involved or are well informed in advance, so that whenever we come up with the result, they are able to consider them and act accordingly. The last point that we said is we need to revise and strengthen extension services and ensure strong linkages between extension and research institutions. Strengthen, revise, and strengthen, because some of the villages, for example, I remember when I was doing my survey, there were some villages where you go and you see they have almost 20 years. They have never seen any extension agent there. So you can imagine how those farmers are giving among themselves wrong information about different adaptation measures because they have no information that are coming from well-informed people. So we need to make sure that all of those farmers have access to extension services so that they can be able to implement, because those extension services will provide the research for the outcome and the farmers will be able to implement. That is what I can say. This group was chaired by Professor Majaliwa. I don't know if there is one of the members who need to add something that I might have forgotten when I was capturing this. Please, you are most welcome. Thank you, Chair, back to you.
Thank you very much, Yamungu, for those that good feedback, round up, and so we appreciate that. And I just want to call upon Professor Majaliwa to add on something. He has his hand up.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I think I will comment just maybe additional thought on what colleagues have ably presented. I agree with the first group that we should, the science advice should actually be independent. And it should be very far away from politics, which is completely correct. However, we need to also think of reducing tensions across the science policy boundaries. Because if there is tension, then nothing is going to happen. Another way of doing this basically is to make sure that we increase the public understanding of what we are actually promoting. And this will actually facilitate better policy dialogue between the scientists, the communities, and the policymakers. But we could also think of effective lobbying, because in some cases, anyway, generally the policymakers are not obliged to actually take the advice from the scientists. There are cases where the evidence may not be so obvious, and in that case, the policymaker has the right to actually have reservations on the advice. But we should actually put in place mechanisms which recognize the limit of science and enable the policymakers to actually take the right decision. So the other thing I wanted to also talk about here is actually doing responsive research, which on the eyes of the policymakers will actually be very good. Otherwise, they will actually consider it as any rubbish. So if they don't see it with good eyes, they will not take it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much for all those inputs from the different sessions, and we really appreciate. And we are going to definitely include this in our report. It will just not end here. So we shall see how we can improve on all those points and also share with you. Now, without wasting time, we are supposed to have a short free interaction on research opportunities for research collaborations on agricultural greenhouse gas emissions research. It is a free interaction, and while we are also coming from out of the free interaction session where we had our breakout session, I would just like to call upon if there is anyone who feel like they want to say something on this topic before we get to the closing point of our sessions. please kindly you just raise your hand, and if you would like to say something, it may be something that was covered in these sessions in the last 3 days, or that you think that is an opportunity that we need to follow up on it and see how we can make use of such opportunity to increase our collaboration. You can also put in the chats as we go on, but again, we will also get back to you on emails, and probably you may share your thoughts also in case of anything. Kindly note that this event was really brought up to also increase those collaborations. And we hope that during the sessions and all the events that are like during this event, we hope that it has created some networking or collaboration of a sort. The speakers have shared their emails, some of them on their presentations, and these presentations will be live, have been recorded live, and they're available on our YouTube channels, and you can always reach out to us at any time. But before we completely close the session, we would just like to call upon the organizers of this event to kindly come and give us our closing remarks. So I would like to call a representative from the Forum Secretariat, Dr. Runyararo Jolene. She is the Manager, Research and Innovation at the Forum Secretariat. And she has been one of at the center of organizing this event. So would like to hear from her and just get some remarks from the forum. Thank you. Dr. Runyararo, you are welcome.
Thank you so much for wonderful sharing, and thank you, Akim, for taking us through this session. It has been so interesting, but I know I'm standing between you and the weekend, so I'm going to be brief. First and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to the speakers and the panelists for their valuable contribution to our side event of the Forum Triennial Conference over the last 3 days. My deepest gratitude goes to all who attended this event and helped to make it such a successful event. I believe that during these 3 days, we have all had insightful, interactive discussions and great chance to share the outcomes of our research and innovations in the agricultural greenhouse gases. I would like to convey a special thanks to the GRA team for making this event a success. Finally, my deepest thanks are of course reserved for the Forum Secretariat for their priceless contributions and for running a smooth event. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I now hand over to Mr. Hayden to give his last remark. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene, and greetings to everybody here at the final stages of this, what has been a very, I think, satisfying and interesting days. Firstly, to thank all of those of you who have participated actively in this series of events. Especially to our speakers, of course, taking the time to prepare your thoughts and participate in the panels, etc. And the participants who have been part of this Zoom platform, and also those who have watched on the YouTube channel. And that's important to note that, you know, we've had good participation through these days, and we know people's agendas are very busy, but having the meeting recorded makes it available in perpetuity for anyone who, you know, finds out about it later and wishes to explore the agenda in any way. So that's going to be a really good resource, you know, for everybody. I think, you know, in addition to having the opportunity to hear from our presenters about the various efforts being made at global, regional, national, subnational levels to promote you know, obviously greater investment in research, greater connection between research policymakers and benefit to society. It's also provided the space, you know, in the meeting for us as scientists or policymakers or society to share our thoughts and learn from each other. And I think everyone in their particular perspective would say others need to learn. And I think that means everyone can learn, right? And we can all kind of adapt our way of communicating, our way of thinking, so that our message can be heard by others more effectively. And likewise, we can receive what others are saying more effectively, and bring each other closer together, even if we are very distant in this current pandemic situation and having to work remotely. I want to thank our partners in Reforum. It's always a pleasure to work with you all. We have now, in addition to our grants program, conducted a number of events and activities, and I hope this continues, and we continue to innovate and think of other ways to support our science community within your region. To Jolene, Salman, and the team, our greatest thanks. To the GRA team, and I want to especially congratulate Akim for all of his work. He's really carried this event at very unforgiving times of the day. For those who don't know, he's based in New Zealand, and right now it's 11 minutes past 3 in the morning. So he's very committed, as you can see, to this, and certainly from the GRA side, we really much appreciate his efforts. So I hope everyone has found this to be in some way instructive and interesting. Again, just our thanks. Hopefully you've seen the efforts we're making in the GRA community, providing that platform to try and bring together these distinct views and interests relating to agriculture and climate change. And we look forward to interacting with as many of you as possible over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hayden. Thank you very much to all the speakers and to all the participants. Some of you have been with us for the last 3 days, and we are really, really grateful. So as promised, we shall reach out and send out the slides to you on emails and probably interact further. So thank you very much. I now would like to declare this event closed, and we are really grateful. Thank you, and have a blessed weekend.
Everybody.